CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest.
Hey everybody, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. You know what? I never put a poll out for my nickname. I'm going to go with Doug. This is Doug, the duration of this book, and alongside of me is...
Scarrels. Nickname yet to be determined.
Or just Justin, I guess.
No, Scarrels.
All right.
I'm scary.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah, it was a nickname one of my coworkers while I worked at Apple had given me. They're like, "You're scary, so you're Scarrels." I'm like, "Oh,
Gotcha.
Okay, cool. I like it. I'll take it."
I never knew where that came from, but I guess I do now.
How you do? Same with Metal House, right?
Yeah, I got that one. I woke up this morning and I was just like, oh, I get this. Nobody else knows what the hell we're talking about right now, but
No, and that's okay. That's all right.
yeah, it's not even like a joke or anything. It's just
No,
yeah,
no, just a passing moment in our lives. Yes.
Not missing out on anything. So
No, not at all.
well, what do you say? Should we read off our lovely patrons?
Yeah, let's do it.
All
Wait.
right. I think it's me, isn't it?
Yes.
We've got Jan the Picker, Luciana Etrigan, Ryan the Topological, Damian Face in the Rock, Nate Fiddle Me This, Shield Anvil Dylan, Calvin He Who Witnessed, Livia the Malazan Potato, Aaron Mott Irregular, Scott the Only, Graceless Passion, Dead Smell, Gestriant, My Own Genesis, Alex the High Mage, Tyler the Great Raven, The Joyful Union, Tony the Watch, Steve Bottle Cags, The Mortal Sam, John I'd Kill the Mule, Talk the Middle Child, and we have a new patron, number 23, Peter. Peter, you have to get us a nickname here for you, and we'll get that updated, but at least for now, there's your shout out. So thank you, everybody. It's great to have you here.
Joining along our epic quest. All right, chapter 4 of Midnight Tides, epigraph. There are tides beneath every tide, and the surface of water holds no weight. A Teist Edur saying.
I like that quite a bit. It's just very literal, but I feel like there's just more to it than that as well. So I just thought it was cool.
Does it remind you of anything?
Probably. Kind of drawing a blank right now when you put me on the spot, but it makes me think of like the beach and the fucking the rock that was, pounded by the waves over years and years and years. I can't remember what it was, the giant or whatever.
I mean, yeah, that's not where I was going. But I was thinking more of House of Chains, right? We heard a lot about layers in the sand. That this
I don't remember that at all.
Oh, okay. But yeah, it reminded me of the layers of Raraku. There are tides beneath every tide. There are layers beneath every layer, type thing.
Sure.
So, definitely different themes, but kind of like same concept or similar concept, which I thought was neat.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I withdraw.
You're good, man.
Good.
Pretty decently long chapter here today, so.
Yeah. It was a good one, though. I liked it.
Yeah, I did as well. I think I probably liked the latter half of it, probably more so than the beginning part, but yeah, it was a good chapter. I wasn't bored reading it, that's for sure.
No, not at all. I would agree with you, though. The latter half was definitely piqued my interest a little bit more. But yeah.
Well, we'll get
Go
going
ahead.
here. got to remember what this is like. It's been a bit.
I know, right? It's been what, 3 weeks since we recorded chapter 3?
Has it been that long?
Been a minute, yeah.
Yeah, it has been a minute.
And with the holidays coming up and you're
Yeah, I
fucking-
was hoping we could wrap up this subbook before I went on vacation, but things have been busy, and that's it. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. So
yeah,
I guess
it is what it is. I'm not
Yep.
terribly concerned about it.
no, we got plenty of episodes in the bank. So the Narek believed the Edur were children of demons, that there was ash in their blood staining their skin. To look into their eyes was to see the gray of the world, and as Benatas strode towards the group, the Narek were keening. Fists beat their own faces and chests as they fell to their knees. Baruch the Pale was among them, screaming curses and making demands, but they didn't listen. Finally, he turned to where Saren Pedek and Hall Bedek stood, and he laughed. Hall frowned and told him it would soon pass. Baruch asked if that was so, if the world would too pass. All the frenzied cavorting, empty of any meaning. He should have hired Thored. Saren kept her focus on the approaching warrior. She could see he was a hunter, a warrior, probably also one who could keep quiet for long stretches of time. She could imagine this Benatas sharing a fire with Hall, and perhaps they would share half a dozen words over a day or two, and this would lead to a deep friendship, and this was baffling to women. Forces at play that she could see and sense, but was still outside of. Baffling, frustrated, and only half believing. Words brought women together, and a friendship among women knew only one enemy, and that was malice. So the more words, the tighter the weave, the closer the bond. Saren had lived most of her life among men, and the rare occasions she visited home in Letheris, she was viewed with unease by the other women, as if the choices she had made had but a question to her loyalty. She felt an unwelcome awkwardness around these other women, feeling trapped by her own silence. So, in answer to that, she left, away from the city, her past, and most importantly, the other women. However, in the briefest meeting between two men, they were almost indifferent with their greetings, and she was knocked back a step, physically and shut out. She was here, occupying the same space as them, but may as well have been in a different world. It was too easy to say men were simple beings. They might have been strangers, but they may as well have been sniffing each other's assholes like a dog, proving again they were simple and in their place a number of simple generalizations. However, two men meeting who were already friends destroyed those generalizations and usually led women to anger, and the malice desired to step between them. She thought that a man on a beach looked down and saw one rock, and then another, and so on, while a woman saw rocks. But maybe even that simplified things too much. Man as singular, women as plural. It was more likely they were bits of both. They just don't like admitting it. Benatas was taller than Hall, and Saren knew the Sengar name. She had likely seen his kin among delegations on her 3 official visits to Hanan Mosag's tribes. Baruch was shouting at Benatas, welcoming him and introducing himself. Benatas cut him off, saying he already knew who he was. Baruch continued saying he brought iron ingots. This time Hall interrupted and said he, Baruch, would test the thickness of the ice. Benatas said the season had changed and the ice is cracked. There had been an illegal harvest of tusked seals. Hanan Mosag will have given an answer. Saren looked to the merchant, looking at his face. Alcohol, white nectar, and the cold had lifted the blood vessels to near the top of his skin. His eyes were red and bloodshot and had virtually no reaction to the Edur's words. When he spoke, he said it was regrettable that his merchant brethren, that were those who didn't hold to agreements and were easily lured with gold, a tide none could withstand. Benatas said the same could be said for vengeance. Baruch nodded and said all debts must be paid. Hall said gold and blood were not the same. Baruch didn't agree with this, and the interests he represents would hold to a bound agreement, as leather is a multi-headed beast. So the best way to control things would be an alliance between the Edur and the Letheris, who still hold to agreements bound by words. Benatas told him to shut up and save his words for the Warlock King. He would take him to the village, and that was all the understanding they needed. Baruch walked back to his wagon and told the Nerek to get to their feet. The trail going forward was downhill. Saren watched as he climbed in the back of his wagon. Hall and Benatas were facing each other again, and she could hear what they were saying thanks to the wind. Hall said he would speak against Baruch's lies. He would try and trap them with smooth assurances and promises that wouldn't be worth a dock. Benatas shrugged and said they had seen the traps they had laid out before the Nerek and Tarthanol. Each word is a knot in an invisible net. The Nerek swords too blunt to cut through, and the Tarthanol too slow to get angry, while the Fered could only smile in confusion. Benatas said they were not those tribes. Hall said he knew. His people believed in stacking coins, one on top of the other, climbing higher and higher to glorious heights. The climb signifies progress, and progress is the natural inclination of civilization. Progress is the belief from which the notions of destiny emerge. The Letheris believe in destiny, their own. They deserve all things, and the empty throne is ever there for the taking. Benatas only smiled at Hall's words. He turned to Saren and asked her to join them, and asked if there were old wounds that skewed Hall's view of leather. Saren said destiny wounds them all, and the Letheris wear the scars with pride. Well, most of them did. Hall asked if that was a virtue. She said if that's what they wanted to call it. They had a talent for disguising greed as freedom, and as for their past acts of depravity, they prefer to forget about them. Progress, after all, was about what lay ahead, not behind. Benatas said that progress sees no end. Saren, I think, who was speaking here, said their wagons roll faster down the hill. Benatas said until they hit a wall. Saren retorted, saying they usually crash through most of them. The smile faded, and Saren thought she saw a look of sadness in the Edur's eyes before he turned away. Benatas said they live in different worlds. Hall said he would choose his. Benatas shot him a look and asked if that really was the case, and his tone made the hair on Saren's neck rise. Nothing else was said, and Saren let Hall and Benatas take the lead on the trail and gave them some privacy. Even at that, they did not speak much. She watched them walk, strides matching, and she wondered about them. Hall was clearly lost, looking to make the Teist Edur the hand of his own vengeance. If he could, he would send them to war, but destruction only yielded strife, and his dream of finding peace within his soul in the blood and ash of slaughter filled her with pity for the man. She could not let that blind her to the danger that presented. Saren held no love for her people. The Letheris' hunger and inability to see things in any way other than their own promised clashes with every other people they encountered, and one day they would meet their match. She thought their wagons would smash against a wall more solid than they had found before. Would it be the Edur? It didn't seem too likely, even though they possessed formidable sorcery, and the Letheris had yet to encounter fiercer warriors, but their combined tribes amounted to less than 250,000, while King Discanar's capital alone amounted to over 100,000, and there were half a dozen cities that had about the same. All said, they could amass about 600,000 troops, maybe more, and each legion would have a master of sorcery trained by Kuru Kwan. The Edur would be annihilated. She thought of Hall and steered her thoughts away from him. The choices he would make were up to him, and she didn't think he would listen to any warnings. She acknowledged her own confusion and wondered if she would push peace at any price. What would be gained from the Edur? What resources could they claim from them? The harvest from the sea and the living blackwood, she thought. She thought, of course, it's the blackwood they want. It can heal itself. Ships made of it heal themselves. They cut through the waves faster and are resistant to magic. However, King Discanar was not foolish. It wasn't him who aspired to these supplies. That would have been Kuru Kwan. This smelled like the Queen's gambit. It was hard to believe the Letheris could master the living wood, as if the Edur would be willing to give up their secrets. Harvesting the seals was a feint, and the monetary loss was part of a grander scheme, an investment with the goal of returning political dividends, which would recoup their losses 100 times over. Only the Queen or Chancellor Tribun Gunol could absorb such losses. Ships crewed by the indebted who were told their debts would be cleared in the events of their death, their lives given up for the hope of their children or grandchildren. They wouldn't have had a problem manning those ships. Blood and gold it was. Saren could not be 100% sure on her suspicions, but they seemed to fit and left a sour taste in her mouth. As she suspected, they did in Baruch's as well. The Teist Edur would not surrender the Blackwood. There would be a war, and Hull would be its strongest proponent, the Queen's unwitting agent. This is why Baruch tolerated him. And what was her part? She would escort them. That was it. And keep her distance. Deliver Baruch the Pale. She thought nothing would be decided by them. The game's end awaits the great meeting. If only she could find comfort in that thought. 20 paces ahead of her, the forest swallowed Hull and Benatas, darkness and shadow drawing closer with every step she took. It's a pretty long opening section. I've got a few thoughts. I mean, it definitely seems to be laying some things out, and I don't necessarily know that I picked up on everything. And I don't think this was like a weak section or anything like that. Just, my preference was I enjoyed the latter half of the chapter, probably like with Tehol and Bugg more than this. But I am interested to see where this goes for sure.
I would agree. I feel like I understand it a little bit. I feel like I share some of that confusion, and I think that's just partly to do with it's a new book with new characters and new motivations and et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, we're still kind of getting the lay of the land and that type of thing. But
yeah,
I guess we'll start here from the top. So I thought it was interesting. Saren she doesn't seem so surprised, like men and not talking much. But I mean, I would say for the most part, like in real life, that's probably true. Not 100% of the time, all the time, but and that's kind of like baffling to women. But the fact that this deep friendship could be formed with so few words, and this just baffled women. And I just thought we don't need many words. We can. It doesn't take much. And like last night, I had my work holiday party, so there was like basically like two rooms. There was like the dinner room and stuff, and then in the other room was like the bar. You could get a drink or whatever. And two of our maintenance guys were sitting over there, and they're just drinking their beers, not talking to each other. And I started talking to them for a minute, and they're just like, the one was like, my wife's over there, and if you saw who she was talking to, you'd understand why we're here. We don't need to talk. We can just sit here and drink our beers. So it was just funny having that real world example right there.
Well, and Seren gives her real world example, right? Where she talks about the men look at each individual rock, right? Which gives me the sense that as men, we look at things very granularly, which, isn't a bad thing. But as far as the relationship with women, they look at it as like, oh, well, I see a coastline full of rocks, right? They're looking at it more holistically. And while that's not a bad thing either, but then she goes deeper into explaining the relationship between women and men, right? Like calling relationships with women as like a tight knit weave, and when that weave is interrupted or ruined in some way, right? Like it takes work to repair that relationship. So I don't know. It was just really interesting the way that he did this, and it was. I guess I didn't appreciate it upon first reread, but definitely upon my second. Where she kind of just is telling us, the readers, that she doesn't really feel like she fits in with her, women sisterhoodness or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
clear that she's made these observations because she's very, I'm uncomfortable around women, but I've been around men so much that like I kind of understand it.
Right. Yeah. Nicely said there, man. Let's see next. So I think this maybe kind of goes into some of what you were talking about. So Saren's thinking about how she left the city, left her past, and more importantly, these other women. Right. I felt like that kind of hit home, and I feel like, again, generalizing here, right? For the most part, men, I don't think, judge as harshly as women do. not 100% of the time, but I think women can be more critical of other women than, like men will be of other men. I think guys are usually pretty accepting, me personally, like I will give anybody a chance. Like I'm not going to, it takes, you got to try to piss me off to leave, for me to not want to like be a decent person to you. Like if you really piss me off, then whatever. Like I'll just ignore you, or if you talk to me, then maybe I'll get snarky or something like that. But like it doesn't take a lot to just be like, oh hey, how's it going? And good, how are you? And then that's kind of it, and like but I feel like women like sometimes it seems like there's other motives behind that type of stuff. So maybe we're just simpler. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, who really knows? I mean, I think that men and women are vastly different, but at the same time, we're humans, right? So we have similarities,
Yeah.
and I don't think that that's necessarily anything to demonize, right?
No, not at all. So moving on here, Saren's thinking about two men meeting who are already friends. It destroys those generalizations, right? Which a lot of times makes women angry. And then that is the malicious desire to step between them and to, like I'm thinking like cause drama, right? When there doesn't need to be. Like you don't need to cause drama. And I guess at the time I kind of felt maybe like this is talking about Troll and his brothers, and maybe more so between like Troll and Roulade. But it also doesn't quite fit because it seems like Roulade is more the one causing problems there, and not so much the woman. Maybe she could shut it down, I guess, and be like, hey, knock it off. But he's just kind of going for it. So I guess maybe the exception to the rule or something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it means that like, malicious is not necessarily the way that it's meant to be. Just more like a desire to intervene to problem solve, right? And I think that this kind of goes back to like that tight knit comparison she was making with, women in general. So I don't necessarily think it means like malicious as in like malicious. I think it just means like an extreme intent to maybe like try to problem solve. I don't know. I could be wrong.
You know what? If we weren't busy looking at the rock at our feet, this probably would have been a good episode to have a female on here with us.
Probably. Yeah.
Oh, missed opportunities. That's all right. We'll be fine. It would have been interesting to get, like if we had Francesca back on or something. It would have been interesting to get her take on this chapter. I bet that would have been pretty cool.
That would have been really cool.
I didn't even think about that. But
Oh wow.
okay, so Baruch, he says this line: "All debts must be paid," right? And debt, capitalism. I know that we know this is a theme of the book, but that's just really kind of reinforcing it. At least to me, that line just it kind of hit home there.
Yeah, but it also kind of goes back to Benatus, right? Like he's being a little sarcastic here, right? Like he's using the Lethery language to describe the vengeance, right? The vengeance of his people on the Lethery people. Like all
I guess
debts must be paid. You know what I mean? So
I don't know if I picked up on that at all. Like the sarcasm and stuff.
yeah. So I mean, he said, I mean, you summarized it. It was regrettable that his merchant brethren, that there were those who didn't hold to agreements and were easily lured by gold. So basically, what this is saying is that because of the lure of gold, which a tide none could withstand, causes you to hurt a people or a culture like the Edur or the Harath tribe, right? And then Benata said that the same could be said for vengeance, right? And then Baruch nodded and said that all debts must be paid. So it's one of those things where both of them have a point, right? But neither really resolves the problem.
I guess I just didn't pick up sarcasm in that. That's all.
Yeah.
But I see where you're coming from. Skipping down a little bit here, there's a line that I liked quite a bit where Saren's thinking about Hall sending the Edur to war if he could. Destruction only yielded strife, and his dream of finding peace within his soul in the blood and ash of slaughter filled her with pity for the man. I don't know. I just like that, and it's hard to imagine that blood and killing is what's going to lead you to peace. When? How many people? How many are you going to have to kill to get to that point? Everybody else till you're the only one left, or what?
Yeah, it's really interesting, like, and maybe I would understand things maybe a titch more if I had kind of written down motivations and just kind of like mapped them out, so to speak. But Hull wants vengeance against the Lethery by sending the Edur and the Lethery to war, which is essentially the same thing the Queen wants. It's just Hull wants the Edur to win, and the Queen wants the Lethery to win.
Because he was the one, like he kind of got used, right? Like he thought he was going out to help or whatever, and basically the Lethery got their like list of weaknesses and where they're at, probably like number of troops and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, their weaknesses, exactly. Yeah, he thought he was going out to kind of document the Edur, and the Queen, and I believe Kuru Khan assisted in exploiting those documentations for weaknesses. He feels a bit used, right?
Right. Yeah, it's hard to blame him. This thought that the Edur would be annihilated just seems pretty overconfident to me. I mean, you might outnumber them by quite a bit, but obviously we saw like what Hanan Masag could do. I don't think, even if they outnumber them 3-1, rough numbers, I don't think it's going to be a one-sided bloodbath. I think the Edur will probably be able to hold their own.
Yeah. I think both sides are probably underestimating things a little bit.
I think that's probably a fair thing to say.
Yeah.
This sentence confused me a little bit, and I feel like I kind of took this word for word from the book. King Discanar was not foolish. It wasn't him who aspired to these supplies. That would have been Kuru Kwan. This smelled like the queen's gambit. So I guess the king wants this blackwood, but he's not going to be dumb enough to be like, "Yep, this is why we're going to war, so that I can get this stuff." He's making it look like somebody else is doing it, I guess. But I don't understand where it says that would have been Kuru Kwan, and then right after that, this smelled like the Queen's Gambit. So the Queen is setting up Kuru Kwan to do this or something?
No, I think that what King Discanar is trying to do damage control. He's trying to make peace with the Edur without war. The Queen wants the Blackwood because of their ability to make ships out of them that heal themselves, and they cut through the waves.
Resistant to magic, all that stuff, right?
Right, exactly. Which Guru Khan, I would imagine as a sorcerer would want to study that or make use of the Blackwood, right? But this is also really interesting because, I mean, we've heard of the Blackwood before. Isn't the Salanda made out of Edur Blackwood?
I guess I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure it was. So this is where I'm going. It makes sense to me now how that ship was able to survive so much damage.
Yeah.
So it's just really cool how like a small thing like this just kind of makes everything else that you've read like a little bit of a brighter picture.
Do you think we will get to see it?
The Salanda? Maybe that's where this is going. I mean, I know that we were told that we get 3 instances and we met 2 of them already. So I don't know.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
I feel like at least I was wondering, in a chapter or 2 ago when we were wondering, who the hell would agree to man these ships that just got, annihilated, right, by Hanan Masag. And now we find out who it was and how they did it, and it's a pretty nasty tactic. You have these people who have debt, and you say, hey, you can basically go on a suicide run, and when you die, your debt's gone. I guess I could see how like that would be attractive, so that you can, if you got kids, you can set them up to have it better than you or your grandkids, like it says, so that they can have a better life. But it's just a fucked up way to do it. Like it's just nasty. It's just mean that they are exploiting people that way.
Well, you know what makes it nastier, right? Is in this type of society, I would imagine that in one part or the other, you amass debt no matter what, right? So this isn't really to have them or have their children have a better life, but rather to make sure that they don't have more to pay during their life, which is just as fucked up, right? Like, I mean, think of our parents, right? Like, they have debt. As age takes them, that falls on us. We have debt, varying degrees of debt, but like, it's just this vicious cycle, right? But at the end of the day, all that matters is they get paid. Nothing else does.
Yeah.
So that's the very real mirror. And so sometimes, like, parts of this book are really hard to just.
Yeah, I really didn't like that part, and I guess I didn't think too hard on like the real world of us and kind of being in a similar thing to that. But I mean, yeah, you're right. It's true. Obviously, these people don't have doesn't sound like they have the opportunity for life insurance or something like that. So to help with that type of thing. So,
Yeah, exactly.
but that's all I've got on this first section. Anything I didn't talk about that you wanted to, or no?
Yeah, there's this part where Syrian kind of thinks about the wagons rolling down the hill. But at the end of the chapter, or not chapter, but at the end of the section, she says, like, basically, it would be up to the great meeting. And then she compared it to the wagons rolling down the hill and smashing into something. So just thought it was like a really cool way of exemplifying that, like, shit's gonna hit the fan. And she sees it coming, right?
I like that. Yeah, that's a good call.
It was a very interesting first section. And that's kind of where, like, I feel like on my second and third reread, it made a lot more sense.
I definitely I felt better about it when I was summarizing it, and I didn't read the chapter again after I summarized. But again, just taking that time to slow down and summarize it helped quite a bit.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I'm ready to go on here if you are. I'm gonna grab a drink here quick, but
all right.
Go ahead, get started, and I'll be listening.
All right. Section 2. Any criminal that could swim across the canal with docks strapped to their back would win their freedom. The amount of coin strapped to the back was dependent on the nature of the crime. Men had the full amount, while women were allowed half. If one could pay the fine, then they would buy their freedom. For those who could not, the canal waited. The drownings were more than a public spectacle. They were events to be gambled on. Since few criminals made it all the way, attributes like distance, number of strokes, the number of risings, flailings, flounderings, and vanishings were all bet upon. The criminals had ropes tied to them, for when it was confirmed that they were dead, the coins could easily be retrieved. Bryce found Finid Garoon Ebricht on the second tier overlooking the canal. Bookmarkers swarmed through the crowd, handing out payment tiles and collecting wages. Bryce announced himself, and the scarred face of Garoon swung around to Bryce. He told the king's champion that he was just in time. Ublala Pung was about to take a swim. He's got 800 docks on the bastard. Bryce leaned on the railing and admitted that he's heard of the man, but not sure what his crime was. He pointed at a figure in a cloak and asked if that was Ublala. Garund confirmed that the cloaked figure was Ublala, and because he was a half-blooded Taranthal, they added 200 docks to his back. Bryce asked what he did. The Finid replied with, what didn't the Taranthal do? Murder times 3, and destruction of property, and many, many more, all in one afternoon. Bryce asked if that was what happened at Urum's lenders. Ublala flung off his cloak and was wearing nothing but a loincloth. Garun confirmed that Ublala was the one that did it, and for his crimes, he was to bear 4,300 docks. Bryce saw the enormous bags being manhandled onto the Terenthal's back. Bryce surmised that he wouldn't even manage a stroke with all that weight on his back. Garun said that was the consensus. Bryce asked what Garoon's call was. Garoon replied that he was 70-1. Bryce frowned and surmised that this only meant one thing, and that Garoon thought that the Taranthal would make it. Garoon now leaned on the railing and said that the half-blood Taranthal usually got the worst traits, but not Ublala Pung. A roar from the crowd was heard, and the guards on the opposite side were leading Ublala down to the launch. Taranthal was hunched over, carrying the burden of the bags. He pushed the guards away and started to piss. The crowd all commented on his huge dong. When he was... I shouldn't have looked at you. Ooh.
I didn't know you were going to be so literal with it. It definitely alludes to it, but you just went for it. So
I mean, there was a point where someone was talking about cutting it off to use it for themselves. Like, oh, that's dark. Okay,
yeah.
So, I mean,
I'll shut up.
When he was done, he walked into the canal. Not a flounder or flail. The folks that had bet on vanishing started to get excited. Garoon asked Bedict how wide the canal was. Bryce responded and said that it was 100 paces. They remained leaning on the rail. After a moment, Bryce shot the Fanad a look. Fanad. Garoon nodded towards the launch and told Bryce to look at the line. Bryce figured out that Ublala was walking the bottom. He couldn't keep his eyes off the uncoiling of the rope. The cries and shouts had risen to a deafening sound. Bettors were fighting with bookmakers for payment tiles. A guy even fell from the third tier, nearly missing the canal. Sighing, Garoon said that was it. The figure emerged on the opposite side of the launch, and Garoon said that Ublala had 4 lungs. Bryce said that he was a rich man at 70-1 odds. Garoon said that the Taranthal was now a free one. He then tells Bryce that he saw his brother Tehol earlier on the other side of the docks, and he was wearing a skirt. The whole criminal and the drownings and the canal thing, was it chapter 3 or was it chapter 2? We had that TikToker on, and he was telling us about the drownings, and I thought we had missed that detail earlier in the chapters. So it was nice to get a bigger picture.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Potter, the way he was talking, I thought it was something we kind of had to infer from the information we'd been given up until that point. Like, how in the hell would we have ever gotten that?
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But it makes sense here now. I think he deleted his account. I don't know what the deal is. He's not on there anymore. So
yeah, that was weird. I followed him. He viewed my profile, and then you told me about that, and I'm like, oh well, that's weird.
So hopefully everything's all right with him. But yeah. That episode forthcoming yet.
Right.
At this point in time.
Well, I mean, yeah, at this point in time they'll have heard it, but as we are recording, it is not yet released.
Right. December 7th.
Right. Yes, we're a bit putsy. Okay. We shared a chuckle at the crowd commenting on Ublala's huge dick. That was all. I chuckled the first time I read that. I chuckled the second time I read it, and I chuckled when we recorded. And I summarized it. So it was just very interesting, and that seems to be a reoccurring joke kind of throughout this chapter.
Yes. Before you go into your next one here, I was just curious, so I Googled this. So I guess we'll equate coins or whatever docs to just dollars for sake of comparison's sake. He had, what was it, 4,300 docs is what he had to carry.
Yeah.
Or try to swim with, right? So I Googled to see what the payout would be on that at 70-1 odds in obviously dollars, right?
Yeah.
Any wild guesses?
I don't know. 7,500 mil.
No, not quite that. $301,000.
Oh. See, this is how much I suck at math.
That's still, well, I don't understand odds, like how that works.
Yeah.
That's why I used Google and it told me, but still a pretty good return on
800 docs. Yeah.
Oh, I guess I didn't. I used what he was carrying is what I used. The number.
Oh yeah, Garoon.
What did she bet? Or he
Garoon bet 800 docs.
So 800. So okay, we'll say $800 return at 70-1 odds. So if you threw $800 down at 70-1 odds, this is not telling me the same thing. I got a calculator here now. Bet amount $800. American odds. Okay, we'll go fraction odds. So we'll go 70. You would win $56,000 off 800.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
Not bad. If I'm trusting that calculator, I don't know.
Fair enough.
The internet
large
said it, so it
amount.
must be true. Yeah, a large amount.
Well, and I would imagine that, odds 70 to 1, that means that there were probably 70 people betting.
I don't think it's that. I don't like,
Because I thought
I
it
don't
was
gamble like that.
one out of 70 chances.
Somebody out there can probably explain it better.
Right.
I don't know how to explain it.
I could get my 7th grader to explain it.
Do that. She gonna turn into is she a sports betting fiend or something?
No, she just is taking math right now.
Oh,
I haven't taken math in 20 years.
fair.
It was a shorter section, and I feel like it was pretty, for the most part, self-explanatory. So this is my last comment. But Garun basically says that, the Taranthal are half-bloods, but most of them get the worst features. So it kind of makes it seem like he knew that Ublala had 4 lungs, which, if most of the Taranthal half-bloods get the worst features, so the 4 lungs is probably a rarity. But also, who else do we know has 4 lungs? So are the Tobakai half-bloods of the Edur too? Is it a rarity that he's got 4 bloods?
4 lungs.
Or sorry, 4 lungs.
Yeah, I don't know. I did not really remember that Karsa had 4 lungs until you asked that question. But obviously, it worked out for this dude to have 4 lungs, so he could walk across the river. But you know what was funny though was it comes up later in the chapter. I was like, my first thought was like, I'd be so worried about something like fucking trying to eat me. And then we find out that there is this fish in this river that only eats men. I was like, oh, okay. So I had reason to be worried about this.
Right, but the fish is rare sighting in the canal. But when it is sighted, it only goes after men. Nobody knows why. So I wonder if that'll be a mystery we get answered, or if it'll just be what it is.
I think it'll probably just be what this would be my guess.
Probably.
One other thing, I think the dude that fell off the 3rd level or whatever, I don't have my book on me, and I wouldn't be able to find it anyways within the chapter. But when I read that, I took it as he did not make it to the water. He hit the concrete or whatever, hit the ground.
Yeah,
I thought.
Yes, you are correct. He did not. He landed 2 paces away from the water.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with that was probably he lost and wanted to kill himself.
Oh, he's like, fuck, this guy's gonna be broke. Better just kill myself.
Right, exactly. Or maybe it would lead him to debt that he couldn't pay, and he would have to walk the canal. Right, like that is a punishable offense.
Oh, I had another question for you. I don't think you summarized it, but it was talking about the offenses, or maybe this was when I was Googling things the original time and I wasn't listening as well as I should have been. It was talking about the offenses that you would have to pay a fine for or walk swim the canal, right? And it said something about like relieving yourself in public, or I can't remember exactly how it was worded. Was that just like, did you just assume that was like taking a piss? Like
Yeah.
public urination?
Yeah. Which the Taranthal did. What are they going to do? Add more docs to him?
But I can't remember the phrase it was used, but I was like, that's got to be what that is, right?
Oh, I got my book right here. It's a short section. All right. The amount of coin was dependent upon the nature of the transgression. Theft, kidnapping, failure to pay a debt, damage to property, and murder yielded the maximum fine of 500 docs. Embezzlement, assault without cause, cursing in public upon the names of the empty throne. The king or the queen demanded 300 docs in reparation. The least of the fines, 100 docs, were levied upon loitering, voiding in public, and disrespect.
Yeah, that is. Voiding in public. You Googling it?
Yep. Yeah, urinating or defecating in a public space.
I just hadn't heard it phrased that way, but that was my assumption is what it was.
Yeah. I mean, good catch, and I didn't think of that. So yeah, also a double fuck you. Like, here's my giant dong. I'm gonna pee in the canal.
Or just in front of you. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I got a shorty here too. So Tehol told Shand not to stand too close, just close enough they could hear each other, but so others didn't think that they knew each other. Tehol said maybe and asked if she saw that man. Shand asked who. Tehol said the criminal, of course, the half-blood who tore up Urum's, and that man deserved it for all the extorting he had done. Shand said the Tarthanol had 4 lungs. Tehol agreed and said she must not have placed any bets. Shand said she hated gambling and wanted to know what he was pointing out about this man. Tehol said to hire him. Shand said she would be happy to. Tehol said after hiring him, buy him some clothes. Shand was against this idea, and Tehol said the man wasn't being hired because of that physical attribute. They needed a bodyguard. Shand said he could guard her body anytime. Tehol said he had talked to her enough for the day. She said that was untrue. The workshop, tonight, and to bring Bugg. Tehol tried to say everything was going as planned. She interrupted him and said to be there. Short section. I didn't really have any thoughts other than Shand is in favor of this guy apparently. So
Well, I can see why. Yeah, for sure. He could guard my body anytime. Yeah, is what I imagined her saying.
yeah,
That's fair. And isn't Shan Taranthal? I feel like in chapter
uh,
2 we got.
I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure that they were half bloods.
They're from the islands or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't remember who was what or
I think it's funny that like Tahol tries to avoid meeting tonight because he feels that it's not like in it's too suspicious. He's trying to be like secretive. I didn't really understand what the section was when I first read it, but now that I have reread it 3 times, I definitely understand what this is doing.
he's just being a sneaky fellow.
Yeah, I mean it's not really necessarily any notable comments, but more just rather for story. All right, well, we ready for the next section here?
Yes, sir.
All right, 4 years ago, Finad Garun Ebrecht had foiled an assassination attempt on King Discanar. Returning to the palace late one night, Garun had come across 2 bodies outside of the king's bedchamber. Their lungs had been filled with sand by a sorcerer. The door was ajar. The Fined had drawn his sword and entered the room. He found 3 figures huddled over the sleeping form of the king. It was a mage and 2 assassins. He killed the mage first, severing his spinal cord. He then thrust his sword at the nearest assassin, the point of the sword buried in the man's chest. It would prove to be a mortal wound. The second assassin aimed his dagger at Garun's face, the point entering Garun's mouth, slitting his lips and pushing his front teeth apart. Garun was able to chop his sword down, eventually killing the assassin. The last engagement was witnessed by the king. 2 weeks later, he knelt before King Discanar in the throne room, and in front of everybody was granted the king's leave. For the remainder of his life, he was immune to criminal conviction. He was, in short, free to do whatever he pleased, barring the king's own bloodline. The identity of the person behind the attempt was never discovered. Since then, Garun Ebrecht had been on a private crusade, a lone vigilante responsible for the murder of 31 citizens. He had become the most feared man in Letheris. He had, in that time, also made himself rich. Yet for all of that, he remained a Finad in the King's Guard, and so was bound to the usual responsibilities. Bryce figured the decision to send Ebrecht with the delegation was as much to relieve the city of his presence. Bryce wondered if the king regretted his decision. The 2 palace guards walked across Solon Bridge into the purser's district. They entered Rild's, which was known for its fish menu and an alcoholic drink made with seal sperm. They took a seat at Garun's private table in the courtyard. As soon as the lunch and drinks were ordered, Garun leaned back in his chair and regarded Bryce with curiosity. Garun wondered if his guest this day was the king's champion. Bryce said yes, but then explains that his brother Hall is with Baruch the Pale, and it was believed he will be with the Edur until the great meeting. There were concerns about Hall. Garoon inquired about that concern. Bryce said that Garoon knew Hall years ago. The Finad agrees and tells a story about him and Hall getting drunk and impregnating a whole troop of females or something like that. Bryce explains that Hall isn't the same as he was back then. Garoon said that Hall believes in one thing, and that is loyalty. Granted, he was sorely betrayed, and with that, a list of every man and woman in Hall's head. The difference between him and Hall, though, was that he actually managed to cross people off his list. Bryce asked what if the king's name was on Hall's list, and why is Hall with Baruch the Pale? Garoon stated that Baruch is not the king's man. He was the opposite, and he looked forward to finally meeting him. Garoon said that anyway, it wasn't Hall that had him interested, but rather his other brother, Tehol. Bryce asked if Tehol was on the man's list. Garoon smiled and said that if Tehol was, then Bryce would be the first to know. But Tehol wasn't on his list, but is up to something. Bryce said that this was hard to believe as Tehol stopped being up to something a long time ago. The Finad said to the King's Champion that this is what he thinks, but told Bryce that Tehol was dealing in few interests such as property, licensing, mercantile investments, and transportation. He managed to raise plenty of fronts, enough to be fairly certain that no one notices. Bryce said that it wasn't solid enough then. Garoon shrugged and said that in many ways Tehol walked the king's leave long before him, and without it being approved. Bryce said that Tehol never killed anyone. He was cut off by Garoon's feral smile. He explains that the day the tolls collapsed, a dozen financiers killed themselves, and that collapse was exclusively because of Tehol's shenanigans. Tehol had his own list, only he didn't strike with a knife, and instead made them all his business partners and took every one of them down. Bryce said that he went down too, though. Garoon said yes, but he didn't kill himself, and that should tell him something. Bryce said only that Tehol didn't care. Garoon said that was correct, but wonder who Tehol admires. Bryce replied that it was Garoon that Tehol admired. The Finad said no, but was impressed, enough to be suspicious now that Tehol is stirring the pot once more. It was someone else that Tehol admired. Bryce looked away, deciding whether he liked this man enough to continue this conversation. Their lunches arrived. After a time, Bryce said that he doesn't speak to Tehol. Garoon asked if he despised what Tehol did. Bryce said no, and that he despised what his brother did after, which was nothing. Garoon said that the water had to clear, enough for Tehol to see what was left. Bryce wondered if Garoon was suggesting that Tehol was a genius. The Finad said he was, as Tehol possesses something that Hall does not, and that was knowledge, and the capacity to do something with it. To do it perfectly, with absolute timing, with devastating consequences, that is what Tehol has, whereas Hall does not. Bryce looked up and asked if he meant to say that Hall was Tehol's greatest admirer. Garoon said that it was Hall's inspiration. That is why he is with. Garoon said that it was an inspiration to Hall, and that is why he is with Baruch the Pale. Bryce asked if he would stand in the way. Garoon said that it would be too late if that was his intention. Bryce asked if Garoon wanted war. Garoon replied that that particular tide stirs the deepest, blinding everyone, and a man with that goal can get a lot done in that cloud. Eventually it settles. Bryce figures that this means that the world has changed, for war was the means. Garoon interrupted and said, to a peaceful end. Bryce said that Garoon would find that pleasing. The Finad pushed his plate away and asked Bryce what life would be without ambition. Predict rose and said that Tehol would be better suited to answer that one. Garoon smiled at him and told Bryce to inform Nefadas and Kuru Khan that he is not aware of the complexities surrounding the great meeting, nor is he blind to have him ushered out of the city. Bryce said that he would convey his words. Garoon said that he regrets that Bryce couldn't finish his meal as it was good, and that the next time they converse, it would be about smaller things. He both respects and admires the King's Champion. Bryce put it together and asked if he is not on Garoon's list. The Finad joked and said not yet. Besides, brides could cut him to pieces, and what's not to admire about that? He sees it this way. The history of Letheris could be understood by recounting the three Bedict brothers, and it's clear the tale is not yet done. Bryce thought to himself that it would seem that way. He thanks the Finad for the meal and the time. Garoon leaned forward and grabbed Bryce's plate. He asked if he could bring it out to the back exit where there is a starving lad in the alley and give it to him. Very important conversation. The section starts off with like a little bit of a history lesson. Not really history, but a transpiring of events, so to speak. My first thought was, is the first assassin that he buried the sword in his chest, it was said that it would prove to be a mortal wound. And at the time of summary, I feel like this is important in some way because it kind of gives me the sense that he got away.
I guess I thought maybe he just bled out.
But it says a mortal wound. Doesn't that mean that like survived?
No, you die.
Oh. Damn it.
But
yeah,
I'm
fatal injury. You're right.
This next thing here where you kind of had that aha moment.
Yeah.
I think I had that at a different part, but then as you were reading it, I was like, okay, maybe this is a clue to that. So I'm hoping we're onto the same thing here.
I think so. I definitely think so. But yes, the identity of the person behind the attempt was never discovered. And at this point in time, I will just say that's important to note. And as you saw during the summary, I picked up on it just then. So I guess that's kind of the cool thing is that like, it doesn't matter how many times you read the chapter before, sometimes you just pick up things that you missed before. So That's cool. Throughout this conversation, Bryce explains that, or they're talking about his brother Hall and how Garoon and Hall used to hang out together when they were part of the same company or before Hall got promoted and was Garoon's boss, essentially. And, Garoon stated that Baruch is not the king's man. He was the opposite. And we're talking about Baruch the Pale, right? So he, from what I understand from all appearances, is clearly delivering silver ingots to the Great Meeting, right? As a way of providing peace, right? For the king. But those are the appearances, right? And it's stated several times throughout this chapter that Baruch is actually working for the queen. So I don't think that the intention is to actually give the silver ingots to the Edur, which would probably explain Baruch the Pale's anxiety, right? Like he's trying to instigate on behalf of the queen to start a war.
I definitely don't think I picked up on that. That he's working for the queen.
Right, and that's why Garoon said that he looked forward to finally meeting, but I don't think it's because he wants to kill him. Based on my last comment about the identity of the person behind the attempt was never discovered. Or it could be because he wants to kill him. I mean, I guess we don't quite know the motivation of the assassination attempt. And I loved this part where, they're talking about Tehol and all the things that he's been up to and how, like unnoticeable he's been about, like inconspicuous he's been about it. Garoon is saying like, oh, he's managed to raise plenty of fronts enough to be fairly certain that no one notices. And Bryce is like, well, it obviously wasn't solid enough because clearly you've picked up on it. And I just thought that was a cool little quip, and I thought it was clever. This part where, Garoon is talking about Tehol's genius. And I think it's so funny to have Tehol described like this. And this just makes me love him as a character that much more. But the way Tehol presents himself, just as this dork doofus, is like so funny to me. Like you don't get genius at all, but they're talking about him as if he's like this master planner. It was just interesting.
What word? I'm pretty sure it had to have been this chapter. The word to use diabolical.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I would think of him, I think.
Yeah. Yes. Him and his brother have that conversation. But I think the cool thing throughout this chapter is that like you kind of get a sense that Bryce still cares about his brothers, whereas the other two seem to be very indifferent for different reasons because they all kind of share a similar traumatic event and they all are just kind of dealing with it differently, I guess you could say.
Sure.
This part where Garoon kind of says that Tehol is Hull's inspiration, and that is why he's with Baruch the Pale. And so basically, it goes back to Hull's list, right? Like Hull was betrayed. He's got a list of victims, very similar to Tehol, right? But Tehol did it in a way that was very unincriminating, right? And I think Hull is essentially trying to do something similar to that and crush those that betrayed him without having to lift a finger, like getting the Edur and the Letheris to war with each other. Kind of a great way to get back at him, right?
Could be.
So I think that Hull is more or less there, maybe to spy on Baruch as we get a little bit later in this chapter. Maybe that who the spy is. Waiting to see if Baruch will actually follow through with the king's instructions or if he'll follow the queen's. If Baruch follows the queen, then Hull probably won't do anything. But if he offers peace and silver ingots, then he will probably kill Baruch.
Read and find out, right? As we like to say.
Read and find out. The last thing that I had here is Garoon sees that the history of Letheris could be understood by recounting the three Bedict brothers, and it's clear the tale is not yet done. And another immediately thought to Idcovian. But I feel like this is foreshadowing in some way. Again, with the three type of theme that I keep finding, right? Like, what if these brothers incite something that we've already read before?
Like what?
I don't know. Like maybe one of the brothers is responsible for Pale, or one of them is responsible for, yeah, I don't even fucking know. It's just like there's so many details, there's so many things moving, like that. It's possible that they started something.
I had not thought about that, but you could be right.
I think that's the cool part about this book, and knowing that it's a recounting of a tale on what happened to or and around the time shortly before Gardens of the Moon took place. So I'm always like thinking about, okay, how does this relate to other events that we've read? Like your example, right? You think we'll get to see the building of the Solanda? Very could,
Well, I don't. It was just an idea I would posture to us. I don't know that I believe it'll happen, but
no,
it could be a possibility. We could,
and
see
that's
it.
what I'm saying is that like the possibility and the thoughts of them are kind of cool. Whether they come true or not, I don't know.
We'll see, I guess. Anything else?
That's all I know.
All right, we'll get going here with section 5. Bugg told Tehol to try on the pants he made. Tehol asked him if there was any point in continuing, and Bugg wasn't sure if he meant about the pants or him continuing to live. Tehol didn't answer. Instead, he asked another question. Had he hired his crew? Bugg said he got 20 of the most miserable bastards he could find. Tehol wanted to know if they had grievances. Bugg said every one of them, and he thought they were all legit too, but a few probably deserved to be banished from their trade. Tehol said they only needed to be competent. He only needed them to keep a secret, and spite against the guilds is the best motivation. Bugg said he wasn't convinced, and they've had some warnings from the guilds, delivered letters. Also, Tehol's left knee would stay warm. Tehol said it was hot outside, and to remind the guilds that they were not going to underbid them. In fact, it was the opposite, and they don't pay their crews higher wages or benefits. Bugg said, barring a stake in the business. Tehol said to keep that part quiet. Bugg said the guilds want to know where in Aaron's name he came from and how he had the balls to register a company. Tehol said not to worry about that. Once they find out what he is claiming he can do, the guilds will be sure that he will fail and won't pay any attention to him. Until he succeeds anyways. Bugg said he was having second thoughts and to put the skirt back on. Tehol said he was reluctantly agreeing on that. He told Bugg to find more wool, preferably the same color, but that was unimportant. Also, they had a meeting with the three darlings this evening, and he needed to clean up around here. Bugg said he would if he had time, and Tehol went to the roof. Two artists had set up easels on the third tier so they could fight to immortalize Tehol and his bed. He waved, and that seemed to start an argument between the two. He laid on the mattress and looked to the sky. He had seen Breeze at the drownings on the other side of the river talking with Garen Ebericht. Rumor was Garen was going with the Teist Edur delegation, which in itself was not surprising as the king wanted him out of the city. The problem with gold was the way it moved, where nothing else could, growing out of cracks like weeds, the way it strutted around when it should have remained in hiding, and if one was interested enough, you could track the roots of the weed all the way down. Sudden spending from family of dead hirelings, followed quickly, but not quick enough by a sudden, inexplicable death or demise. A strange severing that left the king's inquisitor no one left to question or torture to find the source of the conspiracy. Assassination attempts were no small feat, especially when it was the king who was the target and when it was nearly successful, managing to reach Discanar's bedchamber only moments from delivering death. That sorcerer had never shown the skills necessary to fill a man's lungs with sand before. It was high-level sorcery. Natural curiosity and possible advantage. These were Tehol's motivations, and he had been faster than the Royal Inquisitor. A life savings he had found had been spent on the conspiracy. Clearly, only Garen had known the full extent of the scheme. Those that he had hired would not have expected their employer to attack and kill them. They had fought back and nearly succeeded while the Finad carried the scars to show how close it had been. Immunity from conviction, so Garen could do pretty much anything he wanted to. He was the judge and executioner for crimes real or imagined, minor or major offenses. In some ways, Tehol admired him for his determination, if not his methods, for planning and gambling everything on a scheme that would take one's breath away with how bold it was. No doubt Breeze had official business with the man because he is the king's champion. He didn't like having his younger brother so close to Garen, because if there ever was an enemy to Tehol who was just as, or maybe even more nasty than himself, it was Garen. And he had been sniffing around, so it was probably safest to assume that Garen knew Tehol wasn't as poor as he pretended to be. Though Garen was immune, that didn't mean he was without enemies. Though he was deadly with the sword and rumored to have a dozen armed guards to protect him while he slept, it was also said his estate was impregnable. He had his own armory, apothecary with his own alchemist, plenty of storage, and his own water well. He had planned for pretty much anything, except for the singular focus of one Tehol Bedict. Tehol thought. Sometimes the only solution was the most obvious one. See a weed in the stones, and you pull it out. He called for Bugg and heard a faint reply from below. Tehol asked Bugg who was holding Garen's tiles on the bet this afternoon. Bugg said he should already know since he owns the bastard, but it was Turnbull, assuming he wasn't dead of a heart attack or suicide. Tehol said there was no chance he was dead. He was probably packing for a trip to the outer islands. Bugg said he would never make it to the outer gates, so Garen was probably on to him. Tehol now thought suicide could be an option, as he has no family, so his debt would die with him. So Garen would be out 800 docs. Tehol said he might wince at that, but he could take the hit. He was worth a peek, maybe even more. Bugg asked if he really didn't know. Tehol relented and said he knew exactly what he was worth, but he was suggesting that the loss of money isn't what would sting Garen. It would be the escape, the one trail Garen couldn't willingly follow down. So Turnbull has to commit suicide. Bugg didn't think Turnbull would agree to it. Tehol agreed, but it was set into motion. He told Bugg to go to the eddies and find a suitable corpse, fresh but not yet drained, and get a couple bottles of Turbo's blood in exchange for. Bugg interrupted, asking, what would it be? Fire? Who kills themselves with fire? Tehol said fire would be an unfortunate consequence from an oil lamp left unattended. Unattended because of the suicide. Burnt beyond recognition. But the Scrivers swear by the man's blood. That's how they work. Bugg said a man's veins never lie. Tehol agreed, but said, sometimes they do. Bugg said, yes, if you're insane enough to drain a corpse and put different blood into it. Tehol said it was nasty work, but was glad Bugg was up for it. Bugg asked what about Turble. Tehol said they would smuggle him out. The man always wanted to take up fishing, but they needed to watch for him in case he decided to run sooner than expected. Garen's watchers would be their best witnesses, and that would really piss off the Finad. Bugg asked if this was a good idea. Tehol said there was no choice. He was the only man who could stop him, so he needed to get to him first. Bugg said if he figures things out, Tehol said he would be a dead man then, and Bugg would be out of work. Tehol said this wasn't true. The ladies would keep working, and of course, he was unofficially Tehol's beneficiary. Bugg asked if he should have told him that. Tehol said, what did it matter? He was lying. And Bugg's head sank down. Tehol settled back into his bed and thought how he needed to find a good thief, and he knew the perfect one. So, I guess we'll see if we are aligning on our thoughts here.
Right. Quick comment. Before the first two times that I read this chapter, the second time being while I was summarizing, this section gave me the most trouble.
Really?
But now I understand it.
Your last section, I think, probably gave me the hardest time.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. But maybe that's because I didn't summarize it, and vice versa here.
Right.
First thought, Tehol, they're talking about this crew of 20 that they hired. They only need to be competent. He only needed them to keep a secret, and spite against the guilds is the best motivation. Did we find out what that secret was already?
Yeah, do you remember in chapter 2 when Bugg and Tehol are talking about the eternal domicile and how it was sinking? And how they were going to build around it with
that was this. Okay.
Yeah, that's the secret.
I was thinking about these two artists, sitting up so that they could paint Tehol, and he waves to him, right? And then they start like fighting with each other, and I was like, they're probably fighting over something stupid, like, oh, he waved to me, not you. Like, I don't know. Just that was like the thought in my head. But
or another possibility is they were fighting over who gets to depict Tehol waving.
Well, I mean, they both could technically, right?
No, because you can't sell two pieces of artwork that are the exact same.
Well, what if one's better than the other?
It's not original.
I suppose. I see your point. That could be true.
Just a thought, but yeah, I giggled at that. He just on his roof like, oh.
Yeah, just like this. Just like you said, that lovable idiot, right? He pretends to be, right?
Right, but like, these are the parts where, like, is he really a genius?
You had a thought here.
Yeah, so this part where Garoon had known the full extent of the scheme, those that he had hired would not have expected their employer to attack and kill them. That was the line during my read that made me point out what I had kind of epiphanied while I was summarizing my first section. So
sure,
yeah,
and I think my thought here kind of piggybacks off that too. But like, I was kind of spitballing thinking about this, but the Finad, he hired these people to attempt to assassinate the king so he could stop them and save the king just in the nick of time. Then he gets his free reign, or his, I can't remember what they called it, or he's judge, jury, executioner, right? Like he can do whatever he wants. The king's leave, and so he's acting like he's trying to hunt down, like, oh, who's this person that tried to assassinate the king, when it was really just him, and he knows that they're never going to find him, so he can just he's just got this open end to do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I would 100% agree, and the whole, now that I've had the clarification about the mortal wound, I was thinking that prior to understanding what a mortal wound really entailed was that under the assumption of he got away or he had life-saving measures or something like that, this was who he was hunting because now he knows that he could be foiled. Was kind of like where my head was going to, but clearly that's not the case. I would imagine that Garoon's confidence is because all witnesses are dead, right? So like there's no way of knowing it would get back to him.
All right, yeah, there's nothing to worry about.
So yeah, good catch. That's awesome. I don't think it was until I read this chapter again last night where I'm like, oh, holy shit. So yeah.
Nice. Well, it's cool when we have like the same thought and maybe it comes in a little different parts, but
Right.
Yeah, that was cool.
But Tehol and Bugg also have this like weird interaction at the beginning of the sentence where they're talking about these, the secret and the 20 people that Bugg recruits. But on top of that, they like Erickson interchanges it with, Bugg is obviously sizing up pants for Tehol. So like they switch between, and that I think is what like started me off this confusion. And then it goes into like explanation of Garoon and Tehol's kind of understanding of Ebrick's motivations, right? So I was just like, what does this have to do with pants? So I'm like, yeah.
But I like how he does do that where like you have like two different conversations going on between two people at the same time, right? Like, you're talking about kind of serious business and then they're fucking around with these pants, It's just it's silly. It's
say
funny.
Genius. No. So,
right.
Yeah. That's where I think I was. I think I just started off on a bad foot and it kept going until I reread it one last time and I'm like, okay, now I get it.
You got a couple thoughts here?
Yeah. So like Tehol talks about, the weeds, right? Money, the gold, are like weeds, and sometimes the best solution was the most obvious. See a weed in the stones and pull it out, right? Well, the weed is Garoon's riches, right? Because he obviously can't protect himself if he can't pay his dozen guards.
I'm not sure I'm following you.
So earlier on in the section, we get this kind of like monologue, whether these are Tehol's thoughts or like a narration. It says
about the gold stuff.
Growing out of cracks like weeds.
Yep.
The problem with gold was the way it moved where nothing else could, right? Growing out of cracks like weeds, the way it strutted around when it should have remained in hiding. And if one was interested enough, you could track the roots of the weed all the way down. So based on Tehol's logic and genius, right? The thing that he sees, the weed in the stones to pull out, is Garoon's riches. And
so he can't.
Right, so he can't protect himself.
Gotcha.
Thus the reason for staging a body to protect Turble.
I just need a little further explanation.
You're cool. Again, this was one of those things where like I didn't pick it up until I read it last night.
Yeah, no, I didn't pick it up at all until you were talking about it. I'm like, okay, I get that. That makes sense.
And when they're talking about Garoon would be out 800 docks. I mean, isn't including the 70-1 odds though, right? Like, shouldn't he get way more than 800 docks? Because if Turble is the one holding his bet, right? Isn't Turble the one that is supposed to pay out?
I don't know.
Because his initial bet was 800 docks, right? But with the 70-1 odds, I would imagine that the payout would be much larger than 800 docks. So I don't know if that's like maybe that's an Erickson question.
Or just us not understanding gambling.
Right, because neither of us do it. Right, yeah.
I mean, if I gamble, I'll throw some money in a slot machine and push the button for a bit,
The extent that I'll do is I'll buy like $20 worth of pull tabs, and then I'm done. After I don't win, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm out $20.
Yeah, you had your fun pulling them.
Right. Yep. I'm good. So
Last thing I've got here on the section. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, sir. Last thing here, just at the end of the section, Tehol tells Bugg that he's his unofficial beneficiary, and Bugg's like, "Well, should you have told me that?" And then Tehol's like, "Well, it doesn't matter. I was just lying anyways." And then Bugg's head sinks down. I was like, "Oh, damn! Like that's kind of sad. Like I don't know if it's really a light at the end of the tunnel or anything like that, but I guess maybe it's easy to forget that Bugg is Tehol's slave, and maybe maybe he sees why his head sinks down is because if he's unofficially the beneficiary, maybe he sees him more as like a friend than a slave, and then he's like, "No, I was just kidding."
yeah, I could see that. I think my perspective is that Tahol is probably maybe socially inept. Like he's obviously very logical, very wise, but I don't think that he's like very in tune to people's emotions. And so says things that are probably hurtful, even though that's not his intent.
Yeah, just a little oblivious sometimes.
Who knows?
That's all I got.
All right. Section 6 here, halfway there. Shirk El-Ale's fate had taken a turn for the worst. Nothing to do with her profession of thievery, but rather an argument with her landlord. Things had gotten violent, and in the attempt to defend herself, she flung the landlord out the window. He landed on a citizen passing by, and they both broke their necks. Careless self-defense had led to the death of an innocent, and for that she had been charged 400 docs. She would have paid it, but the argument with the landlord over a hoard of gold had mysteriously disappeared. Without a doctor or name, she was marched down to the canal. Even then, she was a fit woman. 200 docs was doable, but the retrieval rope snagged on the spines of a lupe fish that had surfaced to take a look at the swimmer, just to dive back down and took Shirk with it, and she drowned. Unbeknownst to her, she had been cursed by one of her past victims, a curse fully paid for and sanctified by the empty temple. So even though her lungs filled with water and her heart stopped, she stood covered in mud when retrieved from the bottom of the canal. Everyone shunned her as she would walk by, even the lawless. Her flesh did not decay, and she had all her senses available to her. Bugg found her right where Tehol said she would be, in an alley behind the bordello, listening to sounds of pleasure. Bugg called her name, and when she turned, she said that she gives no pleasure. Bugg said that sadly neither did he, but he wasn't here for that. He was there to deliver a contract to her by his master. She asked who that would be. Bugg said he couldn't reveal that just yet, but clued her in and said it involved thieving work. She said she had no need for riches. Bugg said that it would depend on the substance, he imagines. Shirk stepped out from the alley and asked what Bugg's master thought she'd desire. Bugg said that it was negotiable. Shirk said if Tehol knew she was dead. Asked if Tehol knew she was dead. Bugg gives a banter in reply, and Shirk reveals that no one hires her anymore. Bugg said that this was precisely why his master knew she would be available. Bugg said good and told her where to meet Tehol. She said that she would be there and said she would give his master 15 minutes of her time. Bugg said that this would be plenty of time, and she said that this was foolish to be so confident in that. Bugg asked if it was foolish to be so confident in that. This came out of nowhere for me. I really was not expecting this section at all, but like it was really fucking cool.
Yeah.
But we talked a little bit about the lupe fish earlier. Apparently rare and only 8 men. No one knows why. I think it's interesting to me knowing what we know about how Erickson writes. Like, why call this out? Why is this here if there isn't some significance to it?
I don't know, just to, I guess, make the world feel more real, I suppose. Just add that extra level of detail. I don't know.
Maybe. My next thought here is unbeknownst to her, she had been cursed by one of her past victims. And also, another interesting piece, I kind of like the addition to her character here. And I'm just really excited to see where this goes, right?
Yeah.
But on top of that, the curse was fully paid for and sanctified by the empty temple. And I'm assuming the empty temple is synonymous with empty throne.
maybe that's just like the church where they worship it or something.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. But I wasn't sure what you thought too, but it sounds like we agree.
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, this other part that I found really interesting is Bugg finds Tehol right where she should be, in an alley behind a bordello, listening to essentially people fucking. Like,
A bordello must be like a whorehouse or something.
Yes, I do believe so. Correct.
Not a term I've heard before, I don't believe. So,
Yeah.
but
The only time I've heard it was I think it's Tales from the Crypt movie, Bordello of Blood.
Okay.
Yeah. Huh. Last thing is, again, at the end of the section, I really loved Bugg's banter with Shirk. And I loved where he was kind of doing what Tehol was doing and making things up in some of his responses to Shirk. Like, nope, I was just kidding.
He's just winging it.
I think Bugg says that his master sends his condolences or something like that. And she was just like, did he really? And Bugg's like, no, not really. And it's just kind of funny how Bugg seems to maybe look up to Tehol a little bit. Kind of going back to your last comment in your last section about the sad part. Kind of seems like there's a little bit of mirroring happening.
Is it? I don't know. You got your book, right?
Yeah.
Is it Shirk or is there another U in there? I don't know if
just
I fucked up
one U.
Is it?
Yeah, Shirk.
No, then I fucked up her name in my sections.
Yeah, Shirk. Just one U.
Oh, okay. Well, I put another U in her name after the R.
Sure.
I don't know why. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why I did that. But
fair enough.
All right.
We can move on.
Sounds good. One of the three women asked where Bugg was. Tehol said he would be here as he sat on the couch getting comfortable. He eyed the women and asked what was so important that he must risk being discovered via this reckless meeting. Shan said they wanted to know what he had been up to. Rasar agreed, and Hejin said they didn't need a bodyguard. Tehol said he had forgotten about him. Where was he? Shan said he told them he had some belongings to collect, but he would be back shortly, and the other two had not met him yet. Rasar said Shand had been known to exaggerate, and Hejin, she didn't know what this all had to do with the bodyguard. She didn't care how big his. At that moment, the door creaked open, and Ubala's shy face could be seen. Tehol called out to him and told him to come in. Ubala said there was three of them. Tehol asked what he meant by three. Ubala said, 3 women. Tehol said he was correct, and Ubala's face was one of concern. Tehol told him not to worry. He would protect him. Whatever belongings Ubala had fetched, pants or loincloth, were not among them, as he walked in, naked as he was at the canal. Not that clothing would have hidden much. Tehol asked if he was hungry or thirsty and told him to sit down on the bench, not the chair, as he would end up wearing it. He introduced Ubala to the 3 women, saying they needed a bodyguard, and he assumed that he had accepted the job from Shan. Ubala said he thought it was just one of the women. Tehol asked what difference it made. Ubala said it made it harder. Tehol said most of the time they would be here. His voice trailed off as he noticed one of the women had moved or noticed that none of the women had moved or said a word since Ubala arrived. I couldn't look at you, but I could see you giggling.
Oh, we're children. Okay, fair enough.
Lots of subtle dick jokes today.
Well, I don't think this is a subtle dick joke. I think this is a dick joke.
Yeah.
I thought there was only going to be one. Well, what's the difference? Well, there's 3. It makes it harder.
Take that as you will.
Yeah. I don't know if that means harder to bodyguard 3. It makes his dick harder.
Right. Yeah, take it how you want. It could be both. Yeah, that was really my only comment on that section. Just kind of it feels like a clever little joke. So
yeah, it does. I mean, I'm sure the 3 women will take it how they want it.
Not gonna say anything. Not gonna say anything. Not gonna say anything because It could be taken badly.
Yeah, probably. I apologize. Okay, all right. Are you ready for the next section here?
Yep, we should probably move on.
Yeah. Nisal had been the king's first concubine for 3 years. No official power was given to that title. There were currently 6 concubines in total. The other were young and from powerful families, potential investments of the future, and to capture the attention of the prince as much as the king. Similar to the 4 queen's consorts, they were housed in a private, isolated quarter of the palace. Only the first consort, to Rudel Brazad, and the first concubine were permitted with other people outside of the royal personages. Bryce bowed to Nisal and saluted Preda Unantol Habaz. He was not surprised to find the first concubine in the Preda's office. Nisal had decided her loyalties long ago. The first concubine said her and Preda Unantol were just talking about him. The Preda added that they were guessing as to the conversation he had with Garoon Ebricht. Bryce asks for forgiveness in not making his report to her sooner. Nisal guessed that it was probably pretty rehearsed by now, as he had to give that report to the first eunuch and the Sita Kuru Khan. So they will allow a less animated story. Bryce frowned and looked at his Preda and said that he wasn't surprised to find out that Garoon remained one of her officers, even though he was granted the king's leave. He figured that she would have already been made aware of their conversation. The 3 converse about Garoon's arrogance when Preda asked Bryce if Garoon gave him cause to call him out. Bryce responded that he did not, but states that he feels like he was warned. Both women fixed their eyes on him, and Bryce added that he had been reminded of Garoon's ongoing kill list. One of the women asked if Garoon was planning on killing Baruch the Pale. Bryce thinks this is the case, and the first eunuch has been made aware. Nisal, pacing the room, said if the king found out this tidbit of information, he may be inclined to pull Garoon back from the delegation, which would unto itself be a victory for the queen and the chancellor. Bryce added that the perceptions could be paramount when it came to strategy. Nisal said that the advantages would go to the queen by Garoon's absence, and that outweighs any advantage they could fashion. Pale proceeds under directions from the queen's camp. Bryce wondered at how well Baruch is doing with these burdens. The Preda revealed that they have a spy close to him, and he's been nothing but a drunk lately. The queen wants war. She made a fine partner to the stupidest chancellor in the history of Letheris. On top of that, thick, easily led prince waiting impatiently to take the throne. Bryce shifted uncomfortably and said that if Baruch might be uneasy about his instructions, then maybe he could be swayed in a different direction. The Preda said that this wouldn't happen under Molrak Navath's watch. The champion narrowed his eyes on Nisal and said that this all was leading to something, but wasn't sure. The Preda sighed and said that Garoon needed to add Molrak Navath to his list, and that would be difficult. Bryce added that it would be as the man was singular and in every way incorruptible. Sworn loyalty to the prince and the king's leave does not allow killing royalty. Nisal added that Garoon may not be able to act directly on the prince, but rather in other ways. Bryce admitted to the first concubine that he doesn't understand Garoon Ebricht's motivations and doesn't know what his cause would be. Preda said that she did, and she knew exactly what he's up to. She believes that they can see what he adds to his list. Nisal said the concern was what role Garoon's old Finad, Hall Bedict, would have during the playing out of all this. Bryce looked away as he felt he was under siege. If it wasn't one brother, it was the other. He told the 2 women that he would need to think for a day or 2. The Preda said okay, and they said goodnight to each other. In the corridor, 5 paces past the chamber entrance, were 2 guards. The king's champion slowed to a halt, unmindful of the pair of eyes at his back. In the 2 guards' heads, 3 titles: Master of the Sword, Finad, and King's Champion. All were cause for admiration and envy. They might have wondered as to what he was doing. The way he stood, his mind in another place, the weariness in his shoulders, they might have wondered what had been empathy turned back to admiration and envy, and that gruff assertion brought them many things, including isolation. This is another section that I felt like pretty confused about, but I guess we'll just maybe talk it out.
Sure. Yeah, this one I think I've maybe struggled with too.
So they're talking about, the first concubines, and the others were young and from powerful families. I think it's interesting because this is kind of very similar to Hanan Mosag and capturing the heirs or the second in command of the neighboring tribes, right? Like as his Krishnan circle or whatever it's called. It's just an interesting similarity, right? Like you have concubines from powerful families.
Oh, okay. I see.
It's just there's a parallel there.
Sure. I did not think about that at all.
But the other thing is that, potential future investments to capture the attention of the prince as much as the king. So my thought immediately goes is, you think they've inadvertently shared a concubine?
The prince and the king?
Yeah. I mean, it's
Not
possible,
something I
right?
would have. Maybe. I don't know. Not a place my mind had wandered.
Sure. Fair enough. This part where, Bryce was not surprised to find Nasal, or the first concubine, in the Praetor's office. And I kind of wonder if Nasal and Unantal might be lovers. I kind of like get that vibe. But also the next sentence is literally like, has decided her loyalties long ago. And so I would imagine that that is the king's loyalty, right? One can only wonder. So basically, from these three perspectives, right? They don't know what Hull is going to do. And that's because Hull is essentially, my guess, waiting for Baruch the Pale to make his move. Because clearly they figured out that Baruch is working for the Queen. And the Queen wants to end the treaties between the Edur and the Letheris, right? Which is why she started slaughtering the seals at the Kalak beds. It was like a feint to get the Edur to follow up, right? Seek their vengeance, right? Pulling Garoon back from the delegation would essentially be a victory for the Queen and the Chancellor, because then Garoon doesn't kill Baruch.
Interesting how all this stuff, like, I mean, they're thinking about how things are going to play out, but is that how it's actually going to play out when we get there?
Right, exactly. It's just all planning, and it's all, well, I don't feel like I've really figured it out at all. This is kind of like my best take.
You're usually pretty good at this stuff, so I wouldn't probably disagree a whole lot with you.
Right. But on top of Garoon trying to kill Baruch, they want Garoon to take out Morak Navath, right? And he's that guy that came storming in chapter 2 when the Preda was meeting with the Queen and the Prince.
I don't really remember.
I was about to go draw his sword.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of remember that.
It kind of seems like we're getting the King's and its affiliates perspective, and then we've got Hull's perspective, we got the Eater's perspective, we got Hull's perspective, all kind of around these similar events, right?
Yeah.
How that cooks up, I feel like I got a little bit of the recipe, but I feel like I'm missing some ingredients.
You'll probably get them.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all the comments that I had about that particular section. My thoughts.
All right. Section 9. Tehol said there was no place for sentiment here. It was sad to say, but Letheris was an unforgiving place. They can't afford to make mistakes. He told Ubala to relax and told Shand it was careless to be careless. In other words, they can't keep meeting like this. Bugg said he had a meeting with the royal architects the next day. Shand said finally, because as far as they could tell, nothing was happening. Tehol said that was the impression they wanted to give. Shand said that was fine, but it should be an outside impression. It shouldn't apply to them. and called Tehol an idiot. If they aren't in on the scheme, then no one is. Tehol said preparation and groundwork couldn't be rushed, but now he has to go. He told them to fix up a room for Ubala and to find him some clothes, and maybe even a weapon he knows how to use. Ubala begged not to be left here. Tehol said this was all business and that he was safe in this place. Sorry, I lost my spot for a second. Shan murmured that of course he was safe. Tehol told her to knock it off or he would hire a bodyguard for their bodyguard. Shan said maybe he has a brother. Out on the streets, the shops were buzzing, staying open later to take advantage of the season. Heat made things restless, which led to certain instability, and later, when the temperatures were unbearable, there would be a draining of energy and debt. Tehol and Bugg made their way down the alleys and soon found themselves among the poor. Voices called from the shadows, and children followed them, a few grubby little hands reaching for Tehol's skirt before running off and giggling. Soon the way ahead was empty. Tehol enjoyed the silence of their neighborhood. Tehol made for the ladder and reminded Bugg he needed to clean up tomorrow. Bugg reminded Tehol that he would have a visitor tonight. He made his way up to the roof, and out of the darkness she emerged. She told him he was late. Tehol said it was still 15 minutes before midnight. He was unable to resist and asked her how her life was. Shirk said she had never heard that one before, but it was a miserable existence, day after day, one step in front of the other, but with nowhere to actually go. Tehol asked if being dead changed that. She told him not to make her laugh. She coughs things up then. She heard he wants to offer her a contract. What for? Tehol said it was actually a retainer. She said she refused all those when she was alive. Why did he expect that to change now? He said job security. She wasn't young anymore. He said she should consider the targets he has in mind. Not a thief alive today would touch them. Only a high mage or someone who is dead could defeat the wards and leave no trail. He didn't trust the high mages, so that left her as his only option. She said there were others. Tehol knew there were two others, and neither of them a professional thief. Shirk wanted to know how he knew that. Tehol said he knows lots of things. One was a woman who cheated on her husband, who then spent all of his life savings using a curse on her, and the other is a child of unknown origins who lives on the tower grounds behind the palace. Shirk said she visits her sometimes. The child has no memory of her life at all. Tehol said that was interesting, and probably in addition to the original curse. Shirk said it was. Half a peak was the going price. How much for sorcery to steal her memories? Tehol said half again as much, is what he thought, but that was a lot to do to a 10-year-old. Why not just kill her and dump her body in the canal? They would include the investigation into this mystery as well. She said she wouldn't mind sticking a knife in the eye of whoever did this to the girl, but she doesn't have any leads. Tehol said she hadn't been completely apathetic then. Shirk never said she was, but since she couldn't find any leads, she wasn't very motivated. Tehol said he would see what he could do. Shirk said Tehol was a genius once. Tehol said that was true. She said then he lost everything, and with that, probably lost his confidence as well. Tehol said that's not necessarily true, and she said it was all a part of his diabolical plan. Tehol said every worthwhile plan was diabolical and asked if they had a deal. She said the secret of the curse on the child was not his intended payment for her services. What else did he have? He was open to suggestions. Did she want the curse undone? Did she want final rest? Resurrected in truth? Revenge against who did this to her? She said she already had that. Tehol said he wasn't surprised and asked who was responsible. She said Garen Ebericht and asked if he was a target. Tehol said yes. Shirk said she didn't like assassinations, but Tehol didn't want her to kill him. Only for her to steal his fortune. Shirk asked if Tehol was one of Garen's targets. He didn't believe so and hoped to keep it that way. She said as far as her retainer, she wasn't interested in living again or fully dying. What she wanted was the semblance of life. She wanted her skin to glow, to get her hair done, her eyes to shine, and she wants to feel pleasure again. Sexual pleasure. Tehol said maybe it was just the company she kept with. She told him again not to make her laugh. Tehol said some of these things would be easy enough, others would be more of a challenge, but something could be managed. She said it wouldn't be cheap. Tehol said he was sure Garen wouldn't mind paying for it. She said, what if it took everything he had? Tehol said money wasn't really the issue. He just planned on dumping it into the river anyways. She said she could take it with her. Tehol told her not to make him laugh. She asked why, and he said it was an infectious laugh. They agreed on a deal and settled on midnight meetings. He told her to stop by tomorrow night and he would make her a new woman. She said just as long as she smelled new, and Tehol said not to worry. He knew just the right people. This was kind of an interesting section here, but I don't really think I had any thoughts on it. Just I kind of like the negotiation between Shirk and Tehol here, and that type of information we get. I don't know that any of it's really going to add anything later on, but it was just kind of fun to read.
Yeah, I mean, it was very straightforward. I mean, I feel like there's a certain amount of compassion here.
Even though he's kind of a sarcastic dick to her a little bit, but
right, yeah. I mean, exactly. So, and that's kind of where, I mean, he lists off quite a few things that she may want. So, I mean, maybe he is more perceptive than we think.
Yeah. But I guess what do you, I mean, at the same time, there's somebody who's undead. There's probably not a lot of options. Like, do you want to just really be dead and done, or do you want to come back and be alive, I guess?
Right. And it sounds like she kind of picked somewhere in the middle, right? Where she just wants to not appear dead, but she clearly likes the benefit of being dead.
Yeah. Other than, sure. I mean, I get that you would miss pleasure,
yeah, but which is probably why she sits outside a bordello reminiscing.
Yeah. Right. Which is a little sad, right?
I would say so. Yeah, the one thing that I pointed out was just, he doesn't want Shirk to assassinate Garoon. She wants him to steal his fortune, which I know we talked about a little bit, but again, Tehol is using the same strategy that he did when he took down the tolls, right? Like, he's playing off of the inherent Lethery greed that is probably within Garoon.
Yeah. So do you think he wants Garen to ultimately kill himself? Because that's what those other dudes did. Tehol ruined him and they killed themselves.
I think so. I think that's his ploy.
That's pretty dark. I mean, I guess that's
one way to not, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's one way not to commit murder, I guess, but you just I've just ruined you so bad you have no option but to kill yourself.
Exactly.
Damn, dude.
So,
and he clearly doesn't feel bad about it.
No, he doesn't. Which goes back to his brother Bryce, right? Where that's his biggest issue with his brother Tehol, is that he just did nothing. He didn't seem to care.
Yeah. Well, I'm ready to continue on here.
Yeah. All right. The thief left by climbing down the outside wall. Tehol stood at the edge of the roof and watched her. Once out of sight, he rolled his eyes and turned around to head back to his bed. He heard Bugg's surprised voice down below, but not an alarming one. He sighed. Life was simpler a mere 2 weeks ago, when he'd been without plans, schemes, or goals. He heard creaks from the ladder, and then a figure rose into the room. It took Tehol a moment before he realized that it was his brother Bryce. Tehol said to his brother that this was an unexpected surprise. The two brothers make small talk until Bryce asks the question to Tehol on how often he visits the crypt. Tehol looks at the reflection of the stars in the canal and then tells his brother that it had been years since their parents have died. He shrugged and said the family crypt was a sunken room filled with nothing. Bryce understands and then asks Tehol how he honored their parents' memory. Tehol rubbed his eyes, reminding him of how tired he actually was. Thinking had drained his energies, leading him to admit that he was out of practice. He asked his brother if he had missed something, like a festive holiday he was supposed to appear at. He continued to ramble on about families congregating during a special time. Bryce said that he needed Tehol's help, as it was about Hull. Bryce explains that Hull was going to get himself killed. Tehol then asked his brother why none of them had managed to find themselves a wife. Bryce started to say that it wasn't what he was talking about. before he was interrupted by his brother saying that it was simple and to blame their mother. She was too smart, and it wasn't father who had managed the investment. Bryce said that Tehol was her son, more so than himself or Hall by far. Tehol said that all three of their expectations reside in the clouds. All of us have tried, haven't they? Bryce asks his brother to get to the point. Tehol said his point was Hall. Wasn't that what Bryce had come to talk about? Well, Hall had met a woman, as smart as their mother in her own way. It was Hall's greatest gift, but didn't recognize it for what it was, when it was right there in Hall's hands. Bryce stepped forward and raised his hands as if to choke the living shit out of his brother. Bryce said that Tehol didn't understand, as the prince was going to have Hall killed. If not the prince, then first eunuch, should Hall speak out against the king. Bryce laughed and said that there was also Garoon Ebricht, who will also be there. Hall will be there at the great meeting, and his motivations are the only one they don't know. Hall can't play his game if a stranger wades into his midst. Told his brother to calm down, and he was getting to the point. He explains that Hall found her and then lost her, but she's still there. Seren Paddock. She'll protect him, Bryce. Bryce snarled and said like their mother did their father. Tehol said that Bryce asked if he honored their parents. He can tell his brother this, that when he sees Bryce, he's reminded of his father, as he sees much of his father in his younger brother. More than Hall. He would hazard that he himself is much more like their mother. Thus, Bryce asked for help, but will not hear what his brother is saying. There doesn't need to be reminders of their parents' fate. Their mother could have saved their father, but couldn't because of them, the three brothers. She feared for them. Bryce asked if, without her kids, she would have saved their father from that moment of cowardice. Bryce faced Tehol, his eyes glittering. Tehol thought that yes, that would have been the case, but explains that from their parents they have drawn lessons that from that to their lives. Bryce chose protection of the king's guard, where debt will never find him. As for Hull, he walked away from it, from the gold, and sought to honor by saving people. Even when that failed, did Bryce think Hull was capable of killing himself? Their father's cowardice was betrayal, of the worst sort. Bryce asked what lesson Tehol was living out. Tehol explained that the difference between him and his mother is that he had no children to worry about. He thinks that he would achieve what she could not, despite her love for their father. Bryce asked how dressing in rags and sleeping on a roof accomplished this. Tehol admits that perception is reality. Bryce said that even if Tehol had most people fooled, he didn't have Garoon fooled. Tehol told his brother to go home. Serene Paddock has Hull's back and will continue to do so. She cannot help herself, as this was a flaw in geniuses. Bryce asked if that meant even with Tehol. Tehol admits that he was generalizing, and he never puts himself in those generalizations. Bryce asked his brother how he managed that. Tehol explained that by defining the rules, that was his game. Bryce said that he hated Tehol sometimes and warns him to not underestimate Garoon. Tehol said that he would take care of Garoon and wonders if Bryce was followed here. Bryce said that he didn't think of that, but asked if their voices carried. Tehol assured his brother that their voices wouldn't have carried through the wards that Bugg had put about. Bryce wondered at that name. Tehol clapped his brother's shoulder and guided him towards the hatch. Tehol explained that Bugg was worthless, and they only sought to seek out hidden talents which brought them amusement. Bryce asked if Bugg was the one that embalmed their parents. Tehol said yes, as this was where he first met him, and saw his immediate lack of potential. He explained that the entrance could only be seen from a special place, and normally could make no approach without being detected. He explained that Bryce would have to kill the man, likely Garoon's. He asked if he was up to the task of eliminating this man. Bryce went to ask about the approach, as Tehol had mentioned there was only one. That was when Tehol cut him off and explained that he forgot to mention the tunnels, as keeping Bugg busy was an eternal chore.
That was quite a bit there.
Yeah, that was a lot that was deleted. I'm going to go with cats. And I don't know if I had comments up there at the top or not. I felt, for the most part, that it was pretty straightforward. I remember that one of the questions that I had was around their father's cowardice, and I'm wondering what exactly that pertains to. So Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You think he wasn't like brave enough to kill himself or something?
Or maybe he was cowardice and he did kill himself, right?
Yeah, that could be.
But I mean, it makes sense, right? To me, like sometimes it's hard to save other people when you have so much to look out for, and children are definitely one of those things. So
Right.
I can kind of understand maybe why their mother didn't save their father,
Yeah.
but that's what Tehol is telling Bryce is like, hey, don't worry, that's not the case here because Serene Paddock has got our brother's back, and there's no children to like take care of or worry about, right?
Right.
A few comments that I do have, so I apologize those that are listening that I only have two here, but I just one of the things that I like is Tehol was like, you know what, I was just generalizing about the flaw of geniuses, but I never put myself in those generalizations. And I just I love that response. It was really clever.
Yeah, that was a good one. I think I did laugh when I read that.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was worth mentioning, and again, I'm sure that there was a ton more, I just don't have any documentation, and those serve as our reminders. This part where, they're talking about Bug and how Tehol recruits him because he was worthless and they only sought to seek out hidden talents, which brought them amusement. I feel like Tehol's underplaying things a bit to kind of keep that perception going. I don't necessarily think that he actually thinks Bug is worthless.
I hope not. I hope, yeah, he's just like, because it's almost to the point where it's kind of like nasty the way he talks about him, but hopefully it's for like the point of protection or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna assume too. But I mean, Tahol is smart, so I feel like you kind of have to take what he says as a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I don't remember my other comments. I'm sure that there were probably more, but as my cats have probably,
When you didn't look, they got to your computer.
yep, I didn't close it.
All right. Another short section here. 5 paces from the shadowed section of the warehouse that had the only spot that a hiding place that had a clear line of sight of Tehol's house. Reese had stopped. His eyes had adjusted to the dark, and he could see no one was there. But he could smell the blood, and he drew his sword. No man could have survived losing so much blood. A throat cut wide, and a body dragged away around the corner and out of sight. He considered following until he saw a single, bare footprint from a child as it dragged the dead man away. Every city had its darkness, those who prowled at night in their own game of predator and prey. Rees knew this was not his place, nor did he want to hunt these secrets. This time of night belonged to the White Crow, and it was welcome to these hours. He turned away and walked to the palace. His brother's mind had not been idle, and his indifference was no more than a feint which made Tehol a dangerous man, and Breeze thought he was glad his brother was on his side. At least he thought they were on the same side. I didn't have any thoughts on the section, just I kinda like how he is like, are we on the same side? There's a little bit of what's the
Am-
ambiguity?
ambiguity, yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
But that's exactly where Tahol wants it, though.
Yeah.
You did catch who took the body, right?
Little girl.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this section is explained in the next one. So
yeah. I think this might be your last section here might be my favorite one.
ooh,
I think.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess without further ado, here I go. The old palace soon to be abandoned in favor of the eternal domicile. Sections of high walls indicated that there had been an enclosure of some kind. There was little question in ownership as the buildings predated the founding First Empire. Perhaps for the original builders, there had been something sacred about the grounds, but not wholly to the colonizers. Another possibility to the tower's existence was that the first Letheris had a secret, lost knowledge, and that was why they honored the Jaghut towers. The truth had crumbled along with the enclosure walls, and no answers could be found within the rubble. Even though the area was no longer sealed, it was habitually avoided. The land itself was worthless by a proclamation 6 centuries ago that forbade demolition. Skilled practitioners of the tiles well knew the significance of the squat leaning tower, and of the Jagha dwellings they represented the ice hold itself. Many believed that the Azath Tower was the first true structure of the Azath of this world. From her point of view, Shirk el Allah was less skeptical than she might have been before, if almost exerted a strange pull on the thief. There were kin here, but not of blood. No, this was a family of the undead, those unable to surrender to oblivion. The grounds around the tower were their prisons, and Azath would not give up its children. She sensed as well that there were living creatures here, most of them driven mad by the eons of imprisonment. Others remained silent, as if waiting for eternity's end. The thief approached the forbidden grounds. She could see the Azath Tower. She did not need to see the blood trail in order to follow it. 9, maybe 10 years old, forever. The corpse in front of her was halfway dragged down into the earth. To feed the Azath, or maybe some ravenous occupant? Shirk had no idea, nor did she care. The ground swallowed bodies, and that was useful. The girl asked Shirk why she won't be her mother. She explained to the child, named Kettle, that she was no one's mother. Kettle admits that she had followed Shirk after she had left the roof. She explains that a man came to the house, a soldier, and he had been followed. Shirk asks Kettle which of the two she had killed. Kettle responds that she killed the one that followed. Just like Shirk takes care of her, she takes care of Shirk. Shirk reiterates that she doesn't care for anyone. She explains that Kettle was long dead before she was, living here on these grounds. Shirk used to bring her bodies, and she doesn't even like killing. Besides, Shirk wasn't the only one employing Kettle's services. Kettle explained that Shirk was actually the only one who employed her services. Shirk stared at the girl a moment, confused. Kettle reminds the thief that she wanted to know the child's story because everyone ran from her, just like they run from her, the thief. Kettle inquires about the man on the roof. Shirk said that she was working for him. The child said that this was good because grown-ups should have work to do as it keeps the mind from bad things, keeping people from being unhappy. Shirk asked who was unhappy. Kettle gestured to the Azath yard and explained that they all were restless, and the Azath tower sweats all the time now. Shirk said she could bring the child salt water so she can wash her eyes out, and she wasn't seeing clearly. Kettle said that she could see well enough, with more than her eyes now. Her skin sees and tastes, and dreams of light. Shirk asked her to explain. Kettle says that 5 of them were trying to get out, and she didn't like those 5. She doesn't like most of them, but she especially doesn't like those 5. The roots of the Azath are dying, and she admits that she doesn't know what to do. They whisper how they'll tear her to pieces. She confides that she doesn't want to be torn to pieces and asks the thief what she should do. Shirk was silent and then finally asked Kettle what sense she got from the ones buried there. Kettle explains that most don't talk to her as they've lost their minds. Some beg and some plead. They talk through the roots. Shirk tells Kettle to talk to some of them. Find someone who might be able to help. She suggests that Kettle asks for opinions on any matter. If one remains that doesn't try to manipulate her in any way, then she will tell her about them, and Shirk would advise the child in any way she could. Kettle agreed. The thief told the child goodnight, as she came here for a different reason, but before she goes, she wanted to know how the child killed the spy. Kettle says that she bit through his throat as she likes the blood. Shirk asked why. Kettle explains that she likes the smell as it smells alive. The thief asked how many she killed. The child replied and said that she killed a lot because the grounds needed them, because the grounds were dying. Shirk asked what would happen if it did die. Kettle reveals that everything would get out. Shirk instructed Kettle that from now on, she would be the one to tell the child when to kill. She said not to worry, as there would be plenty. Kettle said that this was nice of her. So, I guess before we get in there, do you want to, why is this your favorite?
Just this, I think this, you got this little girl, and then just like the mystery around the Azath, then like, oh, well, like shit, things are, sounds like they're close to getting out. So,
Hmm. I have a theory about those 5 getting out.
okay.
They talk about the skilled practitioner of the tiles well knew the significance of the squat leaning tower. And I mean, I guess I could be wrong. This may be a stab in the dark. But do you think this is where Silchus ruin was housed? Or you think that that was on a different continent?
I don't know, because I guess wherever we saw that prologue, um, when he got carried away, didn't they say they went like 100 leagues to the north or south, whichever direction it was? Like it wasn't terribly far. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But this made me think of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Is what it made me think of.
Yeah. Fair enough. So it kind of sounds like there's the Azath Tower, right? And then around the tower are like Jaghut buildings that kind of represented the ice hold itself. So many believe that the Azath Tower was the first true structure of the Azath. And, it's really weird because whatever reason, this is making me think of Prince Jalarkin's Tower in Memories of Ice. And I wonder if that is an Azath Tower.
Don't you think like we probably would have got that then?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
You think we're gonna go back there?
I don't know if we'll go back there, but I think that, the first 4 books are predominantly heavy on the deck of dragons. And so now, and a little bit of the hold. So now I think that like the hold information is starting to be revealed with this book. So I think we'll kind of get like, as we move forward, maybe things that intermix with each other.
Sure.
So it just, for whatever reason, the Azath Tower in these grounds reminded me of Prince Jalarkin's Tower. They say that it predated the founding First Empire. I kind of got that sense from Prince Jalarkin's Tower, Memories of Ice. Or there was like a similar descriptor for that.
Sure. And I guess I don't remember exactly how it was described, but
yeah, I mean that was 18 months ago that we were reading the book. So
yeah, it's been a minute.
this other part at the very end of that sentence was the first true structure of the Azath of this world. I like how he uses the word world here like it's intentional, suggesting there are more than other worlds or realms, which we know, but that would explain the travel piece, which is a consideration for early life. Nomadic groups were a means of survival. So under this is the case with the different species across realms.
You could.
And I mean, even Drift of Ollie is migrating, right? We've even had a few pieces of theory around migration and the holds migrating. So I don't know. Maybe that is the Azath.
That'd be interesting.
But also this kind of brings you back to Gardens of the Moon, right? Like an Azath was born because of a Jaghut finist.
Yep.
But this Azath Tower, is surrounded by Jaghut dwellings. So I'm wondering if they kind of go hand in hand with each other. Like, are the Jaghut the keeper of the Azath? With the extermination of the Jaghut, now the Azath can no longer survive. Like the Azath is the prison and the Jaghut are the guards.
I don't know.
I don't either. These are obviously very blind connections, but it's just interesting that, like, again, 5 books into the series, and I am reminded of something that happened in Gardens of the Moon.
I can't say I connected anything really to Gardens of the Moon when I was reading it. That's just me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a little. I guess maybe I'm just a little more self-contained. I guess.
Maybe. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I find it interesting, and like, I feel like I had a pretty good understanding of the deck of dragons, and then they introduce holds, and like I'm still trying to figure out like what exactly does that mean, but like I said in a previous episode, I think that it's just kind of like an order of events.
Sure.
And then there's this part where Shirk is kind of feeling this strange pull because there were kin here, but not of her blood, but the family of the undead. And I feel like this explains how the Kinche and Jamal were undead came back in Memories of Ice. And my guess is someone let them loose from an Azath tower.
That there were hundreds and thousands of them in an Azath.
Could be, yeah, easily.
Seems like a lot to me. Like, how do you get them all there?
I don't know. I mean, is it right? Probably not. But I mean, it's definitely interesting. I mean, they for sure are undead. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with like the Azath can house souls. It can house the undead, those that are not that still have a soul, but their physical body is dead, and those that are alive that just maybe live forever or whatever. Like, I'm not like, is that the thing where, again, like, if there's a companionship between the Azath and the Jaghut, it kind of seems like the Jaghut have the ability to freeze time. So, are these creatures that are alive just frozen in time? Like, again, the prison and the prison guard type theory.
Yeah.
The ground swallowed bodies, and that was useful. And I'm like, that's a perfect way of hiding of a crime. And this makes sense why before Shirk was dead, that she would bring Kettle bodies.
Yeah.
Hide the
It's a good way to
crime.
get rid of a body. Yeah.
Right. But also there's this weird part where, well, I guess maybe we'll get that. This part where Kettle says that her skin sees and tastes and that dreams of light. And I feel like this is kind of tying into a Tice thing. But I'm not sure what that has to do with being dead. Like, how is this undead 10-year-old girl being able to taste and see with her skin? Again, it goes back to the look away to see type thing.
I guess, is it literal though? Is she actually seeing, or is it just?
That's kind of the sense that I got. Like her other senses are just as in tuned as her eyes or something like that.
Yeah.
And then there's this, my last thought is, well, second to last thought. Shirk asked how many Kettle had killed. And she replied and said that she killed a lot because the grounds needed them. Earlier in the chapter, we were told that Garoon may have been responsible for like 31 killings or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's not the case and it's actually Kettle.
Oh.
So the vigilante of Garoon is not actually true. Like, he's purely just there for riches. And I wonder if Tehol is aware of that. And that's why he knows that maybe Garoon is not as adversarial as everyone else thinks he is. Like, maybe Garoon's got a perception and Tehol's onto it, but at the same time, Garoon is also onto Tehol's perceptions.
Love to see.
Yeah. And this part where, because the grounds needed them, and for whatever reason, this is like reminding me of Elder Gods. Because from what I remember is they needed blood or sacrificial elements from their worshippers in order to stay relevant, right? So what if the Azath are tied to the Elder Gods too?
Could be. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just there's a lot of interesting things happening here. Obviously,
Definitely.
the main thing to take away is that the Azath are dying, or the Azath is dying, and that essentially means, as Kettle spells out, that the things trapped in there will be set free, which kind of may explain some of the things that we saw in the other 4 books. Like, where did these
probably
people
not going to be good.
So, yeah, those are all my thoughts on that section, my last section there. So, yeah.
Wrap it up here.
Yeah.
All right, another short one here to end it. Of all the creatures buried under the grounds of the Azath, there was only one who was capable of listening to the conversations between the 2 undead beings on the surface. The Azath was relinquishing its hold on its prisoners, not out of weakness, but necessity. The Guardian was anything but ready, might not ever be ready. The Azath Tower was dying, and desperation led down unprecedented avenues. Among all the prisoners, a choice had been made. Preparations were underway as slowly as the roots made their way through stone. At the same time, there was so very little time. The urgency was a silent scream that squeezed blood from the Azath Tower. 5 kin creatures that had been taken and held since the time of the Kachain Shimal were almost within reach of the surface. And this was very bad news, as they were Toblakai. Yeah, I was not expecting that at all. Like, that
Me
surprised the
neither.
hell out of me. I didn't see that coming.
Me neither.
This it wasn't anything I jotted down, but talk about the Guardian not being ready. Do you think that's like a jaghead? Or what do you think the Guardian is?
I mean, what was it in Tremalor? The Guardian was a Kachain Shamal body they found, and then Moby took over as Guardian. So I feel like it really could be anybody or any
Okay.
race, really. But that's kind of where I'm wondering if that maybe is still just ruin.
But I feel like he'd be ready to get out. He's
Yeah,
probably pissed off.
maybe. I guess. I don't know. I don't know yet. He's Tobakai though. I would imagine that probably not going to go together, or maybe they do. But I almost kind of wonder if one of these 5 Tobakai is the one that ends up chained in Beardy's and House of Chains. Because we
Oh,
get
down
no
at the bottom of
answer.
the well.
Yeah, because we get no answer to that. It's just kind of there randomly. And when you think about it, I mean, if it's just setting up, like maybe one of these Toblakai end up in 7 cities and end up getting trapped in the well. I don't know.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only thought on this was, basically this reveal of the Toblakai, and like we thought the Tice races were old, right? And I've been trying to think like I guess I kind of thought that the Talanimus were the oldest races, was the oldest of the races, but maybe it's the Kachain Shamal. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I definitely didn't think that the Toblakai had been around like for a real long time. So it's to me this was like really interesting that this reveal, like there's 5 of them here. So I wonder where it's gonna go. Like how nasty are these dudes gonna be?
Well, I mean, they're
Who are they?
giants, right?
Like what they do to get tossed in there? Were they must have just been on like a freaking rampage and somebody just chucked them in there, I guess. I don't know.
Right. And here's my question, is like, and maybe this was answered in House of Chains and I'm just not recalling, but are the Teblor adjacent to the Toblakai? Like, are they the same build? Or are they like a half blood breeding with other races? Because from what I understand, Toblakai are giants.
Ours is Toblakai, right? I mean, they call him
They call
Toblakai.
him Toblakai. And from what I understand is the Teblor were essentially isolated. And that's maybe one of the, and they didn't know their real name. So maybe they are just Toblakai with a new name.
Unless like the Teblor, that was just kind of like the name for like all of them as a whole, like the Sunid, Unid, and whatever.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy how much you remember and how much you forget, right? Like
Yeah,
so
definitely.
yeah, but the details are there. They'll all connect eventually. So yeah, I'm really excited to move on.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think we'll
Maybe
get
it'll be.
anything of the 5 Tobakai, but we get to progress
Yeah,
nonetheless.
right. I would think we'll probably see Feather Witch and Udinus and that side of things. I would think.
Right.
Oh, maybe
Probably.
we'll get a little bit of everything here since it'll be the last chapter of the sub book. I don't know.
Yeah. But also the sub book is called Frozen in Ice or something like that, right?
Or just Frozen Ice, maybe.
Frozen
But yeah,
Frozen
yeah.
Blood.
Oh,
Frozen
Frozen
Blood.
something.
So I'm wondering if that will kind of play a part because I can't think of anything in the 4 chapters in the prologue that we've read that would insinuate any type of frozen blood. So maybe there's something there.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, it'll be exciting to read on again for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else there, buddy?
No, just another 3 hours of recording down, and we're ready to go.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's all. Chapter 1 should be available to Patreons either tonight or tomorrow. Maybe a half hour left of editing on that one, which I'll do a little bit later. I'm gonna go watch the rest of the Vikings game.
Probably be depressed about that.
When I saw they were up 14-0.
Oh, really? I haven't looked at all. So, is Brosmer quarterback?
I have no idea.
All right. Well, whatever, I guess.
Not quite paying attention. This season's a wash, in my opinion.
They need to just. They should just lose out.
Right.
Tank.
Get a better pick. We'll see what happens. That's not really the Vikings way, which I can applaud. But at the same time, god damn it.
Take the L.
Yep. For sure.
Just do it once. But
all right, man. Well, I'm gonna go make something to eat and watch this game.
Me too. Yeah. Well, it was good talking to you, and sure we'll chat soon. Take it easy, man.
Sounds good, dude. Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye.
DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest.